We've now looked at pagination both in our HTML interface as well as in our API. For our interface, though, as I've mentioned previously, pagination is not always the answer. It really is worth taking a look at your data, taking a look at how your users are using your interface, and seeing if you can organize the data in a different way. One of the ways that Django anticipates you might want to organize your data is by using dates. We have published dates or maybe modified dates, and organizing specific content by those dates can be a really lovely thing for your users. So we're going to see how we can leverage Django's date views from the generic views section of Django to automatically create, or very quickly, maybe not automatically, create some views for our blog posts. You can see in the browser, I'm running our server, and I've navigated to blog simply by clicking blog in our lovely newly styled navigation bar. Once again, I still only have 2 blog posts, although you could fairly easily go ahead and use a post factory to go ahead and generate a whole host. What's changed a little bit here is that you've noticed that I've actually styled these blog posts, but there is now a whole new section over here for post archives. You can see that I have the ability to look at the archives according to the year, as well as then looking at archives by the month. One of the lovely things is that I'm not seeing archives for dates or for years where I haven't written anything. Now this would become more apparent if I had a much older blog post, let's say from several years back, or maybe from earlier months in a specific year. But we only have links to the specific months in the year or to specific years where we have content. So that's sort of lovely. So our goal here is to try and understand how this is working. And before we jump in and do that, I'm just going to click on August, and you can see all of the blog posts for August. We provide a nice link here to come back to all the posts from 2019, as well as to come all the way back to our list of all of blog posts. So we are going to be using 3 different views. So I've come over to ccbv.co.uk for the classy class-based views, which allows us to quickly look through this. We're going to be replacing our list view with the archive index view. And if ccbv.co.uk is less your speed and you'd like to look at Django's actual documentation, there's always the link here that will take you directly to Django's documentation on the topic. We are then going to be adding the year archive view for our blog posts, as well as the month archive view. And then we'll be left, of course, with the work of having to implement all of the CSS changes in our HTML. Over in the terminal, you can see that I've loaded blog views. And because we're using generic class-based views, which I've imported above, just for your benefit, I'm going to slide all the way up. You can see that it's just Django views generic. We've added month archive view, year archive view, and the archive index view. And you will notice that list view is now gone as we have replaced it. And you can see that I've just looked through the instance variables on ccbv.co.uk to figure out what I need to provide here. I've overridden the month format because I prefer having a number, and then said, yes, we are using pub date on our model post. This is very similar for our archive year. Again, here's our pub date. Now, by default, the archive year does not actually provide the template context with a list of all of our posts. So you can do some interesting thing with the post archive year, for instance, by listing only the years. So you don't actually go ahead and list any elements in that year. You would simply say, here are all the years that were accessed, and then you could use that as navigation towards month views. But for us, I've said, no, on top of having navigation for the month views, I want to see all of the blog posts for this year, so please include that in our template context. And again, this is sort of the model post. Now down below, for our existing post list, which you've noticed I've just kept it called post list. I haven't bothered to sort of do anything interesting there. I'm now inheriting from archive index view instead of Django's list view from the generic views. I have changed some of these options quite a bit. You'll notice that I've kept the query set that we had previously seen for prefetch related in our optimization lesson. I've kept the template name, and I have kept the pagination. So this view will paginate in the event that we have more than a certain number of elements. Much like the year index, it can simply provide rather than a list of objects, it will provide a list of years. So the year index will, by default, only provide a list of months, and the archive index, by default, will only provide a list of years. And in both cases, by saying, no, I would like to include an object list in our template context, I'm saying go and query the database for the actual elements so that we can list them out in our template. I've added the date field, which does exactly what you think it does, and I've had to override the object name. So what's happening here is that by default, the archive index view is not going to use the same name for the variable in the context as PostList does. However, I'm not interested in rewriting this PostList template, so I'm simply saying, yes, when you pass this list of objects into the template, please pass it to a variable called PostList, because that is what we'd already programmed our template to use. And finally, I say, yes, in the event that there are no object lists, you are allowed to return an empty list to this template rather than returning a 404, which is archives index view's default behavior. So that gets us up and running and started. And of course, we need to come over and add these to our URLs. So you'll see I'm in SRC blog URLs, and I've simply added a path. Now this is, I actually think, quite nice, because our path for post detail, you will notice, was for the slug, for the month, and for the year. And by having these archives, we've effectively made it so that every one of these subpaths, as decided by the slash, is now a valid path. So we're, a web application, a dynamic web application, it does not have directories. However, we have this history of having web applications or web servers that are based on directories. And so it's nice if we follow through and behave as if there still were directories. And what that means is that every path segment should be a valid view, at least according to sort of the original idea behind paths and behind cool URIs or cool URLs. Can't remember what the name of that article is. So this allows us to be in a position where we have a valid path segment or URL path segment for each one of these as separated by the slash. And of course, I'm just calling as view. And the post list, as you can see, has not changed at all because we've simply changed our inheritance, so our path does not change. Now, that leaves us with the templates. I'm not going to go through these. There is nothing particularly interesting. We haven't changed any of the logic. We haven't gone through and added any new template tags. It's all the same material as before. It's just that now there are more HTML elements, and I'm referring to the CSS class styles from our new style from earlier in this lesson. It is available. It is in the repository for you to go through and take a look if that is interesting for you. But there is nothing new here that you would benefit from. So with that, we have successfully gone ahead and added a couple extra views that help people navigate and help people find content more quickly than previously available.